Mark Lidbetter here, sports editor of the Suburban. Welcome to Judgement Calls. And let's talk some hockey in this edition, as I'm joined by two members of my team. I have Sean Farrell, who is also the Montreal correspondent for NHL.com, and my longest contributor, Mitch Gallo, who is also with TSN 690. And I guess jonesing for some real sports coverage.
You could say that again.
Welcome, guys. Thanks for coming on.
Morning.
Now, let's talk some hockey in the sense that the NHL has set up a time frame. They've got set phases where they say come, I guess, late July, by looking at it, we could have a Stanley Cup playoffs. We've got 24 teams going, and we've got the Montreal Canadiens in, so that's all good news. I think we should have both venues they finally choose being here in Canada, because wouldn't it make travel easier? Because hockey's an essential sport to us, isn't it? Let's talk about the format. You have the top four teams that are going to face off when we get to the good stuff to seed for their next playoff round. So, gentlemen, what do you think? Will Boston hold on? Sean?
Well, I think first and foremost, Montreal Canadiens fans should be absolutely delighted because the likelihood of them making the playoffs, the way the season was going, when it was called to a halt, they weren't going to make the playoffs. There wasn't a chance of that. So now, I mean, this is gravy for them. It's a wonderful opportunity for the Canadiens. As far as the format, I think it really is the fairest possible outcome. You have a very unusual situation for a sports league, and to reward the teams that were the highest seeds in their conference when the season was interrupted, I think they got that right. And I've always liked the idea of a play-in to the playoffs with so many teams making the playoffs. So I think this is actually something that down the road we might actually see incorporated into the playoffs.
What do you think, Mitch? Could that be a possibility come the future?
Yeah, I think the NHL has probably wanted to do that for a very long time, guys. And now, since they have this circumstance where they have to do it, it gives them an excuse to do it in the future. And I also think if you're looking at revenue and ways of making money, obviously giving teams that wouldn't be in the playoffs more games, more home dates when we do have fans back in the crowd for the 2020-2021 season, it makes a lot of sense to do the playing games. I kind of disagree with Sean as far as liking it. Personally, I don't, because I already feel as though the regular season means squat. And now you're going to make it mean even less if you allow more teams in the playoffs. Like 82 games, you play so many, all of a sudden game 60 isn't going to mean anything anymore. And that's what I find problematic. Like, I find the best run sports league is the NFL. And why is the NFL so exciting? Well, it's 16 games, and pretty much every game is do or die. It's important to make the playoffs. So I don't know if I love the play-in, but obviously, Sean already mentioned the circumstances are obviously very unique here, so I don't think they have much of a choice.
Well, don't get me wrong. I like that down the road that the idea of a play-in would reward the teams that are the highest ones in the conference, and then you have the ones that are fighting their way in farther down, having to battle it out to get in. But that's talking about the future. But for this situation, it's really the best.
And just also, Mark mentioned before Boston and their standing and the top four playing each other. We'll see how that all works out. I really think logic has to prevail here. And you don't have a bracket system, and you don't have the four seeds playing each other for seeding. I think that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and it sounds like they haven't exactly agreed to that. Like, I really think that since Boston was by far the best team in the Eastern Conference, you have to reward them for that. 85% of the season was played. And I think that when all is said and done, the format that we will see for the second round after the play-in, or the first round of the playoffs with the 16 teams, is that no matter what, Boston will be your top seed. and whoever advances, Boston will get to play the lowest ranked team from the regular season. I think that's the only way of doing it. You look at the
that would be ideal, but they want to have those 4 teams playing each other in a round robin so that they're actually having some competition to kind of level out the field, because you're going to have these play-in teams playing series, so there has to be something at stake.
Sean, so how about this? You look at the standings from when the regular season was put on pause, and you say, could Team X have caught Team Y? And if so, yes, then they can pass them in seeding during that round robin or whatever you want to call it between the 4 teams. If the answer is yes, then you allow them to be able to pass them in the standings. But a situation where Philadelphia would be able to pass Boston when they had no chance mathematically of doing that, I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense.
You sound like a Boston fan there, Mitch.
Don't say that. I'm the furthest thing from a Boston fan.
Well, they can hire you as their advocate.
Well, let's look at that now. And as we said, Montreal being in, they're going to face Pittsburgh in their play-in. Can a rested team, Carey Price, snatch that spot and move on? And how deep do you think Montreal could go?
Well, 5-game series. They have a better chance than they would in a 7-game series. Carey Price is a big key. It's again, whatever the Canadians get is gravy at this point. One thing to consider with the Canadians is obviously Marc Bergevin wouldn't have made the trades that he did leading up to the deadline. It'd be nice to have Ilya Kovalchuk and Marco Scandella. You sure wouldn't have just moved Nate Thompson onto Philadelphia if you knew you were going into the playoffs. But, you have to deal with what you've got, and they're just really fortunate to be going into a playoff series at this point.
Yeah, I think obviously the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to be heavily favored. There's no way to make a case that Montreal should win the series against the Pittsburgh Penguins. But I will say, what is Pittsburgh's motivation going to be compared to Montreal? I think Montreal might be the more motivated team. And if they get hot and they get Carey Price playing at the top of his game, maybe they could shock the Pittsburgh Penguins. Crosby, Malkin, Letang, those guys have 3 Stanley Cups. They've been off for a while. Coming back, how hungry are they going to be? And then you have a Montreal side where I wouldn't be able to question how much they're going to want it, because they're coming off a poor regular season, and a lot of their players have been questioned as far as if they can be part of a team that can win. So I would say motivation-wise, Montreal probably comes in with a slight edge there. But obviously, if Pittsburgh's players decide that they want to take over the game or the series, then they're going to be able to do so.
Well, let's look at I won't put you on the spot of saying who's going to win the Cup, but let's see what you think the picks would be for the Stanley Cup final. Who's going to play who? You want to go ahead, Mitch, and start off with that one?
Well, Sean's going to call me a Boston fan again, so I'm a little bit afraid of what I'm about to say. But you know what? With the format and with all the time off and with how short training camps are going to be, I really think you're going to need 2 goaltenders that you can go back and forth with. And I don't know if a lot of teams have that. To me, the best tandems, Boston with Rask and Halak, and the Vegas Golden Knights with Marc-Andre Fleury and Robin Lehner. Man, imagine they got Robin Lehner at the trade deadline in what I think is going to be an absolute steal for this format. So I really like those 2 teams because of the depth in goal, Boston and Vegas, to play in the final.
I like your picks, Mitch. Can't argue against those, and I absolutely agree with you about Vegas, and also about the idea that having 2 goalies to rely on. I think that's something we're going to see more and more in the NHL going forward, is teams having not just a good number 1 goalie, but a 1A. Somebody who can really carry the load if somebody were to go down. I'm going to go with Tampa Bay. This is a format where anybody can win. And let's go back a season and see where Tampa Bay was. I think they learned a lesson, and they'll have had some time to. What a conference final that would be, Tampa Bay and Boston. That would be something else. And in the West, I don't know why, but Colorado has really kind of got my eye. And when you get a series going, a playoff like this, anything can happen.
Sean, can I just add that I would prefer to see your Stanley Cup final as opposed to mine, even though I picked mine?
Yeah, I like yours too, so I get it.
Well, guys, I want to thank you for joining me and being on Judgment Calls. Very good thoughts, but of course you guys are pros. And I know you're chomping at the bit to get out there and cover some amateur sports as well once we get this all behind us.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully when the Stanley Cup starts, we'll be able to meet in person and not necessarily online like this and talk some hockey. This is Mark Lidbetter for Judgment Calls. That was Mitch's and Sean's judgment call on the Stanley Cup situation. And we'll join you next time with a new edition. If you have any comments, any suggestions, email me, sports@thesuburban.com. For now, stay safe, get out, and enjoy what you can.